And at that time I was, shall we say, I've always been interested in the unseen. So the world of the jinn and the world of the angels and the unseen aspects of this universe. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there are 7 heavens and 7 earths. Now, while for some of us it's a belief without much of a reality, if that makes sense, there are some scientists out there who see it as more of a reality rather than a belief. So if you tell them Islam says this, they don't care. They say, we have a theory that there's multiple verses. That's what they say. But at that time, I was more on that side. I understood that there was other things and other worlds, potentially. And I was very interested in time travel. Who wants to travel through time? If you don't, something wrong with you. It's the only legit gambling for a Muslim to do. Because it's not gambling. You know what the numbers are going to be on the lottery, right? So it's a joke, that. So I wanted to time travel. And I really looked into it. Not from like a, I'd sit there with a tinfoil hat on. But it was like I was looking at real scientific theories that could potentially lead to time travel. And at that time, I spent quite a while with it. I came to the conclusion that it's not possible. But there was one anomalous piece of information that sort of was like niggling at me. And that was people who, by the way, don't take that word out of context. It was people who predict the future. There was a man called Nostradamus. Anyone heard of him? He was a man who wrote a book. And he wrote loads of things, but he wrote a book and he talked about events in the future. Now, my conclusion with him was that it was educated guessing. And then I looked at the biblical prophecies. And again, when you go to see what people explain it as, it's allegoric in meaning. So they'd say, well, it could mean this and it could mean that. And everything didn't really have a meaning because whoever you went to gave you a different response, right? And then this brother Amr, he told me about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one of the hadith is from a long hadith called Hadith of Jibril. Does anyone know it? It's a famous hadith, very long hadith. One of the longer hadith, should I say. In this hadith, I'll just take a portion of it out. Jibril alayhi salam, he came to Rasulullah and he asked him some questions. And one of them, he said, when is the hour? And Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the one who is asking knows no more than the one who's being asked. Meaning that I don't know any more than you do. So, subhanAllah, he said, but there are some signs. So he narrated 2 signs. The first one was when the slave girl gives birth to the mistress. Some of the scholars, they discuss the meaning of this hadith. And then he said, and when the barefooted, naked desert Arabs compete with one another in building tall buildings. At that time, they were building Burj Khalifa. And I was wowed because this hadith is very clear. It mentions the people and it also mentions the competition aspect. So at that time, I think Riyadh had the tallest building and then they came along and built an even taller building. And then there was also plans to build one that was even bigger in Jeddah. So I knew then that the predictions of this man, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, were different. So he gave me a book. It's called A Brief Illustrated Guide to Islam. And anyone know that book? It's a very small little pamphlet that talks about different aspects of Islam. And it talked about an ayah in the Quran of how we were created in the womb. And it says that we were created from alaq. And it gives 3 meanings. A clotted piece of blood, something suspended. Yeah? And there's 3 meanings. Something suspended, clotted blood, yeah, and clinging, and a leech. Thank you very much, brother. When I read that, I knew that this was from Allah. Because there's no simpler way of explaining the creation in the womb than that. It's amazing. Then it said, and then from that we made it into something chewed like mughda. Or mudgha, excuse me. And then when you look at the teeth at the back who are thick and it's in the pictures were amazing. I was like, this is from Allah. But I didn't know that you had to become Muslim at all. a brother told me, he brought another brother around who was good at da'wah. He weren't a da'i, brother Ahmed, but he was the one who gets the reward, inshallah, because he brought me to Islam. But brother Jawad, another guy who used to do TV work, I don't know if people see him anymore. Lovely, beautiful black brother, mashallah, with a kind of like an afro. Who remembers Fido Dido? He has that Fido Dido here, bro. Mashallah, I haven't seen him in a long time, but he does a lot of TV work. And to cut a long story short, because I'm running out of time, he said one day, I said, can I go to Jannah? He said, no. I said, why not? He said, because you ain't Muslim. I said, well, how do I be a Muslim then? You got to tell me, bro. And he's like, listen, he goes, it's got to be in your heart and in your tongue, on your tongue and in your actions. So he said, you've got to say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And I said it. It's like, yeah, cool. Then they taught me the dua when you start the salah. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. You know, what about the customer? So I learned that they wrote it down in English for me, and then they left. And I didn't see them for ages. But I started to go to the masjid. I just wanted to go. I went there. And the first time I prayed in the masjid, it was as if I was praying in front of Allah, and it was an amazing moment.